Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought unspeakable devastation to the downtown Eastside community in the heart of my riding. The downtown Eastside is one of the oldest neighborhoods in Vancouver, and the diversity of its community members reflect its rich history. It is a community that has remained strong and deeply resilient despite the many challenges and struggles that comes with poverty and a long history of colonization. The stigma against the people who live in the community is so strong, especially for those who are drug users or those who are homeless, that their struggles, their lack of access to basic human needs like housing, that the violence committed against them, and even their deaths have been normalized to the extent that people no longer seem to care. Recently, a disturbing video emerged where women appeared to be sexually assaulted in broad daylight, yet nobody did anything to help. Similar stories of horrific tragedy have emerged from the downtown Eastside throughout the pandemic. A woman gave birth in a portable toilet and no one had noticed. The baby did not survive. Another woman was held captive and screaming in a tent for 15 hours and no one intervened. Countless other reports of violence against women emerged from the downtown Eastside, always tragic and always accompanied by apathy. Similar apathy seems to exist for people who are struggling with substance misuse. More than 1,000 people have died in BC from overdose this year to date. This is an average of 5 deaths per day. Street homelessness continues to increase amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. Public health officials have made it clear that one of the most effective measures to stop the spread of COVID-19 virus is to stay home, keep social distance, and wash our hands frequently. Needless to say, people without homes or have adequate housing cannot self-isolate and cannot maintain the level of hygiene and keep themselves and others safe. The downtown Eastside now has one of the highest COVID infection rates in the city, and the community members are suffering from violence, homelessness, and the devastating impact of the overdose crisis at the same time. The government says that addressing violence against women is a priority, that addressing homelessness and the opioid crisis are priorities, but their actions echo the apathy that have allowed these horrific deaths and acts of violence to perpetrate in our communities. As 230,000 Canadians experience homelessness each year, the government continues to repeat the tired lines of 3,000 units of housing under the Rapid Housing Initiative when the homelessness problem is so much bigger. The National Housing Strategy only aims to build 150,000 units of affordable housing over 10 years, effectively saying that it is acceptable to leave close to 100,000 Canadians without homes. With this attitude, is it a wonder that homelessness has become accepted and normalized? The government still have not committed to the 50-50 cost sharing with the province of BC, nor have they committed to the Recovery for All policy recommendations to end homelessness in Canada or the CHRA Indigenous Caucus call for Indigenous by Indigenous calls for action. These commitments would truly make a difference in the lives and safety of Canadians. With the opioid overdose crisis killing more people in BC than the COVID-19 pandemic, the government still have not committed to decriminalization as called for by the City of Vancouver. While all advocates of decriminalization, myself included, acknowledges that decriminalization is not a silver bullet. It is an important measure to help stem the tide of overdose deaths. Importantly, decriminalization is an important step to ending the stigma against drug users, a stigma that allows for the deaths and struggles of drug users to be normalized. Every year, the megaphone and magazine sold on the streets by the homeless and low-income vendors produces a beautiful calendar called Hope in Shadows. The photos in the calendar are taken by the magazine vendors and are beautiful images of the community seen through the eyes of the community members themselves. The photos in the calendar captures images of children, friends, families, and their pets who live, work, and play in the community. Other photos feature images of children, images of community activism, art, frontline workers, and acts of caring. The calendar showcases the downtown Eastside for the community that is truly is one's for the community that it is that it truly is once the stigma is removed, a community of vibrant people, each with loved ones, hopes, and dreams. It is time that the government take leadership in treating the community as such and to show with concrete, urgent action that we care about the community and that our community members are not dispensable. One urgent order of action is ensuring the availability of priority of COVID-19 vaccines for community members. In a briefing provided to MPs, we were informed that the priority of vaccines would be given to individuals who are in advanced age, healthcare workers, first responders, and Indigenous peoples. I am deeply concerned that this list of priorities misses many people who are equally vulnerable and in need, many of whom reside and work in the downtown east side. The downtown east side has the highest COVID infection rate in the city. Many residents have pre-existing conditions and other health concerns that make them especially vulnerable to the virus. The lack of safe, adequate, and affordable housing in the community makes other safety measures such as self-isolation and frequent hand washing nearly impossible to take. At the same time, I'm deeply concerned about the safety of frontline workers in the downtown east side. Frontline workers play just as much of an important role in fighting the pandemic as workers in the healthcare settings, but they work in environments where it is extremely challenging to keep sanitary and safe. Just today, we learned that there will only be enough vaccines to cover approximately 125,000 people later this month. That's not even enough to cover the 225,000 seniors in long-term care homes. Until there is a vaccine available for everyone, the government needs to do more to keep people safe. A second urgent priority action for the government is to address violence against women in the downtown east side. 3 women's groups in the downtown east side have called for the immediate creation of a task force to end violence against women in the neighborhood. And I call on the government to take immediate action and commit to lead that work. Gendered violence and violence against women are not new. Just yesterday, we commemorated the 14 women killed at the Echo Polytech massacre. With the COVID-19 pandemic, gendered violence and intimate partner violence has increased exponentially. A women's crisis line in my riding reported early in the pandemic that crisis phone calls increased by 400% in the first months of the pandemic. Long before the pandemic, the National Inquiry into the Missing and Murdered Women and Girls and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission have all identified access to safe housing and safe spaces is fundamental to the safety of women, girls, and 2S LGBTQ people. The pandemic has further eroded access to the safe housing and safe spaces that were already scarce before the pandemic. The government must meet immediately with the groups and work collaboratively with advocates to establish this task force in the downtown east side and develop and fund an immediate action plan to end violence against women. The government must also immediately respond to the City of Vancouver's request for an exemption for the Controlled Drugs and Substance Act within the city's boundaries. In fact, I would urge the government to go even further and enact a nationwide exemption to jumpstart the process of decriminalization of drug use to save lives. For any of these measures to have lasting impact, people's basic needs must be met. For people who need to be safe from violence and disease long-term, every Canadian must have access to safe housing. The government must act immediately and commit to 50-50 cost share with BC and to the Recovery for All policy recommendations to end homelessness in Canada. The COVID-19 pandemic is an unprecedented health emergency that has deeply impacted the lives of Canadians across the country. At the same time, it has exacerbated crisis that has already existed before the pandemic, including gendered violence, the opioid crisis, and the homelessness crisis. None of these crises can be addressed alone. If we truly want to successfully address any of these crises together, we need a coordinated intersectional response and acted with the urgency of our crisis response to the pandemic, delivered with a firm commitment to the indispensability of every single person living in Canada. There has been too many deaths and tragedy already. We must leave no one behind. We can do this, Madam Speaker. It needs political will. It takes courage. It needs all of us to realize the realities and the value of every single person in our community. Humanity is what is needed at this time of crisis. And we need to recognize that no community is dispensable. Everyone is someone's mother, someone's daughter, someone's son, someone's aunt. We all have to lift each other up.
And I'm sorry, we have